Welcome to Prison Life 11, and I'm your host, JR. Well, earlier on, I had posted a video that was depicting the way I lived and what I was going through at that time during my juvenile trials and tribulations, you might say. So, first off and foremost, let me say, please comment, subscribe, and turn on your notification bells because I would like you guys to get my content. It might work for your children, giving them knowledge so that they don't raise up and feel as though they got to go to the gangs, and as that might feel that you're having another person give a story to save a life. Hey, that's how the world works. We all gain wisdom from one place to the next. With that being said, let me continue on with my story. Where I had left off was that, like I said, my partner from across the way, he had told me to go on ahead and take off from the Little League Park. So I took off and I arrived back at my grandmother's house, and like I had told you, I fell out through the screen. And at this point, the wooden door was open. So I come walking up, and I'm seeing my grandfather and my best friend carrying my grandmother. At that time, we had her hospice bed put in my room, in the back room. And I seen them carrying her and her oxygen to the back room. It was a gloomy sight, something I'll never forget, something that changed me. So I walk in, I go inside, and I'm looking around, seeing the damage. There was an old English 40 bottle. That's what my grandmother got hit in the head with. When they threw it through the window, it hit her in the head, and it opened up her skull. She was a 67-year-old damaged cancer patient. And this is how people get down and harm others. That's evil in the plainest view right there. So that was the beginning of my heart changing from being the little 5'3" guy with big bifocals, fatter than the world could say fat, scared to fight, scared to defend myself, depending on my best friend all the time. So alright then, so that happens. My grandmother's laying in her hospice bed. I go back there. I'm sitting on my little futon bed, and I'm talking to my grandmother, and by this time she's hallucinating. She's talking about how she sees people in smoke, and she's telling me things that I couldn't believe and couldn't see with my own eyes. So for the longest that I could, I stood back there sitting there. And when I talk about my grandmother, when I speak about that woman, rest in peace, I was a person who washed her, dress her, medicate her, feed her. That was my mother. Everything before that was drugs, homelessness, and I wasn't even 13 yet. But with that being said, so I go in there, I'm talking to my grandmother. She's hallucinating. And see, at the same time, something I haven't told you guys yet is my grandfather died in the same house. He passed away. He was diabetic. And across from the room that was my room, which was a room that my grandma was now staying in on her hospice bed, was my grandfather's room. And that room, no one was allowed in. No one was allowed in that room. No one was allowed to open that door. There was a small orange key that my grandma would have used to open it, to put all the Christmas gifts in and to put things in there, because we were always left with a vision in our mind that would scare us, because my grandfather died in that room. So she felt that was a safe spot for everything. So anyhow, so I go in there, I rearrange her candles, because she would always light a candle for my grandfather. She'll buy a candle every week. There was a candle all across the window frame and everything else. And with that being said, I went and arranged her candles. I went and fixed the valves for her oxygen. And I decided that I was going to leave that day. because I felt as though enough had happened that the cops might come. And even though that we didn't start the attack on the house, we did go and do some foul, crazy things. And so I left. I went up to what's called the Northeast Heights. And the whole time, my grandmother was calling me because she had a little, at that time, big old square block, Nokia phones, huge, big old bricks. She calls me talking about, mumbling. Where you at, Hito? Where you at, Junior? Where you at, mijo? I'm like, Grandma, I'll be home soon enough. I'll be home, Grandma. I'll be home. And she would give me clecha. She would give me school. And she would tell me, even when I wouldn't arrive home, even when I wouldn't make it there at the time that was natural for other 13-year-old kids, she would always get a hold of me, even in her dying days. She would tell me, you know what, my son, and I was her grandson. But like I said, my parents had drugged me out since a small age, so that my grandmother had to take me from that. And she was like, you know what, my son, you mijito, my loved one, I just want you to know that the life and the way you're heading, it ain't gonna make things any better for you. That was a life your father lived. That was a life your grandfather lived. My grandfather was a pachuco. My father was the president of his clica. No more said. He was a big timer. And me, I was looking up, gazing, wanting it all. But that came even deeper when the day, which was 3 days later, my grandmother died. We always would take off to the Northeast Heights. We would always go there. And it just seemed like that was my best friend's sister and her husband with their kids. That's where we would go. And we would do coke. We would do things that would ruin our life come the future. So, anyhow, where was I at? I lost myself for a second. But yeah. So I ended up going on a little binge. Landed up partying. The next thing you know, I keep calling up my grandmother's phone. I'm calling it up, calling it up, calling it up, calling it up. Not getting no answer. So finally, my best friend's sister gave me and my dad a ride home. And we walk in. And like I told you guys on the last part, that my grandmother was moved into the back room to the right side. Not my grandfather's side, but my side, which was my room up until hospice got her. So the oxygen tank is tipped over. And it's never that way. Never. The phone, she had like an extra long cord so that she could drag it to the room wherever. And we at that time, no one was thinking about nothing other than the drugs and the liquor. And the phone got left in the living room, where the living room, the kitchen, and the hallway meet. And so it got left there. And so what it seemed like was that she was dragging it. And so she dragged the phone to her bed, or what it seemed, and it got caught on the door, which was my room door. And so anyhow, we walk in. Like I said, the oxygen tank's tipped over. I'm not sure what the hell's going on yet. I'm still coming down off my liquor binge, still coming down off my coke binge, and my best friend and my dad are in the kitchen. And I'm shooting straight to my old bedroom, to my grandmother's room. And as soon as I walk in, the bed was an electric bed that you could either close up or open up. And my grandmother, in her looking for the phone, in her trying to get the phone, I guess, or in her pain or whatever, she made the bed close up on her body to where it made her feet touch her head. And God forgive me. Had I been there, it would have never happened. I allowed myself in my anger to take me from the gang war, the gang things we were doing, and I wasn't looking at her and the 40 bottle hitting her in the head. I wasn't looking at any of that. I was only thinking about me. And that's not what I should have been doing. My ego, who I wanted to be, what I thought my dad was, my grandfather, a Pachuco, my dad, a president, me, a soldier. And with that being said, I was only thinking about me. Anyhow, so I go back to the room, like I said, I walk in, her feet and her head are pushed together like this. So I take off running towards the bed, and I'm fumbling for the remote and trying to make it open up. And it opened up about a quarter of the way, and I picked her up and I called my best friend. Help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. My grandmother's dead. She's dead. Help me, help me. So my best friend comes running in, and he's doing his best. He's all, drop the bed more, open it more so that we could free her up. And I did my best, and I'm crying, and I'm fumbling everywhere, and we put her off the bed, and I'm giving her CPR the best that I could. And I'm breathing in, and every time I breathe in, I hear a every single time I breathe in her chest. So finally, she doesn't come back. So finally, the ambulance arrives, and when the ambulance arrived, I let them know clearly that I had been giving her CPR for like the last 15 minutes, and that every time I would breathe into her, she would have a noise come out of her. So the ambulance people, they said, that's called the death gurgle, son. It's called the death gurgle. And she wasn't alive. And I said, nah, I was tripping. I was reaching for straws and strings, and I kept telling them she was alive. I heard it. I heard her voice coming out. I heard a noise. And I kept saying, no, son, that was her death gurgle. She's been gone for over a day. So me being out there, me searching for drugs, searching for liquor, being a 13-year-old boy trying to get high, trying to get drunk, trying to find stability in a place that I was new. The gangs, the wars, everything that wasn't regular. Well, that was my story for today. This was part 2, and I hope that I'm getting you guys to understand that I'm building up, and I'm trying to give you guys me, letting you know who I am, what I've lived, and come to the future. I'm going to start giving stories and advice that what might hold the youth from the penitentiary, stories that might see. There's a program out here that we call the Scared Straight program, and we try and help the youth to stay out of the penitentiary, and so, if there's anything that questions, anything that you think might help with your raising your children and keeping them away from the gangs, or just somebody to talk to somebody, and just, somebody to give wisdom, I'm here. And that's what my stories are going to pretty much be about, the gangs, and how it was for me in Los Angeles, and how it was for me in Oklahoma, and how it was for me in New Mexico and West Virginia. And I've done time in multiple states, and I just want to open up a door to people that want knowledge, that want to raise their kids straight, and want to get their kids to get off that line. Besides that, I just want to also give information to the men and the women that have lived the same life as me, and they feel like they're alone. There's a lot of good channels out there, and we're here for the public. We're here to open up a door. It's called education, knowledge. A door to explanation, to conversation. So with that being said, I salute you all. Everybody who's lived my life, not to the extent or not similar, but the penitentiary life. All you guys with the channels that are trying to help and share. Do your thing, my guys. And with that being said, God bless you all. And you have a good night.